In the 1970s, buying a home in Britain was not a fantasy. It was an arithmetic problem you could actually solve. The average house cost roughly 3 times the average salary. A single earner on an ordinary wage could look at a terraced house and see a future. Today, that number has exploded. The average British home now costs over 8 times the median full-time salary. And in London, it is often 12. The house has not changed. The bricks are the same, the rooms are the same size, but the price has quietly detached itself from the wages of the people expected to pay it. So the question is not really why a house is expensive. The question is far stranger than that. Why did the British dream of owning your own front door become a mathematical impossibility for the median earner? Because the answer is not the one you have been told. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let me show you exactly how the trap was built. The first thing you need to unlearn is that Britain has run out of land. It hasn't. Look out of a train window on almost any journey and you will see field after empty field. Physically, there is no shortage of ground to build on. The shortage is not land, the shortage is permission. To understand this, we have to go back to the year 1947 and a piece of legislation called the Town and Country Planning Act. That single act did something quietly revolutionary. It decided that owning land no longer meant you could build on it. From that moment on, the right to build became separate from the land itself. It became a permission granted by the state and handed out in tiny, deliberate quantities. So today, permission is the rarest and most valuable commodity in the entire United Kingdom. Consider the numbers. A hectare of ordinary agricultural land in England is worth around £21,000. But the very same hectare, the moment it is granted permission for houses, can be worth almost £2 million. That is not a small increase. That is roughly 100 times more valuable. And near London, it can be far, far higher. Nothing physical has happened to that field. No soil was moved. A committee simply said yes and created a fortune out of thin air. This is the engine. When permission is this scarce and this precious, the people who already hold it have every reason on earth to keep it that way. Which brings us to the most human part of this story. Because scarcity is not just an accident of the law. It is actively defended, and it is defended by the very people you would least expect, not villains, neighbours. Picture a village. The people who bought their homes 20 or 30 years ago, back when prices were merely difficult rather than impossible, are now sitting on enormous, tax-free gains. And when a developer proposes 50 new homes on the field next door, those existing owners have a powerful, quiet incentive to say no. More houses would mean more supply. More supply would mean lower prices, and lower prices would mean the value of their own home falls. We call these residents NIMBYs, not in my backyard. But the metaphor that really captures it is a drawbridge. They have crossed the moat. They are safely inside the castle of home ownership. And now, one by one, they are pulling the drawbridge up behind them, leaving everyone on the outside stranded in the water, banging on a gate that will not open. Every planning objection, every campaign against a new estate, is one more chain pulling that bridge a little higher. Now, here is the part that fools almost everyone, including some very clever people. Many Britons believe their home became more valuable over the last 40 years. It didn't. The debt got bigger. Think carefully about what a mortgage lender actually does. They do not lend you a house. They lend you a monthly payment you can afford. And for 4 decades, interest rates fell and fell and fell. As borrowing got cheaper, the same monthly payment could suddenly support a much, much larger loan. But here is the cruel twist. Everybody got that cheaper money at the same time, and there were still only the same limited number of houses, protected by that same scarce permission. So all that extra borrowing power did not buy anyone a better home. It simply flooded into the market and bid up the price of the identical houses that already existed. It was never the value of the bricks that went up. It was the size of the debt that went up. An entire generation congratulated itself on getting richer, when all it had really done was agree to owe a much larger number to the bank. Then, somewhere in the last 30 years, a fundamental shift happened in the British mind. A house stopped being seen as shelter. It became seen as a retirement plan. Once that idea took hold, everything changed. Owning one home was no longer enough. If property only ever goes up, then property is not a place to live. It is an asset to accumulate. And so the amateur landlord was born, then professionalized, then industrialized. What began as one spare flat became portfolios, then funds, then institutional capital, all chasing the same limited stock. And this is the brutal reality for a first-time buyer today. When you walk into that viewing, you are not simply competing against another young couple with a pushchair. You may be bidding against a landlord with 3 existing properties as security, or against a professional investor with far deeper pockets than you will ever have. You are trying to buy a home. They are trying to buy a yield. And in a straight fight over money, the person buying a home almost always loses. You would think the market would eventually sort itself out, that older people in large, empty houses would sell to younger families who desperately need the space. That is what a healthy ladder is supposed to do. But the British ladder is broken, and one of the things that broke it is a tax. When you buy a property in England, HMRC charges you stamp duty on a larger, family-sized home. That bill can run into tens of thousands of pounds. Now imagine you are a retired couple or a widow living alone in a 4-bedroom house in the home counties. Your children left years ago. You rattle around in rooms you never enter. Logically, you should downsize. But the moment you try, you are hit with an enormous stamp duty bill just for the privilege of moving to somewhere smaller. So you do the rational thing, you stay put, and multiply that decision across the whole country, and you get an absurd outcome. Family-sized homes in the best areas are occupied by single individuals who would happily leave, while young families are crushed into 2-bedroom flats they have long outgrown. The space exists. The tax simply freezes everyone in place. So if wages cannot buy a home and the ladder is jammed, how does anyone get on it at all? Here is the uncomfortable answer, and it is the quiet scandal at the heart of modern Britain. They get help from their parents. According to research from Savills, more than 52% of first-time buyers now rely on family money to complete their purchase. Gifts, loans, and inheritance from what everyone now calls the bank of mum and dad ran to roughly £11 billion in a single recent year. Read that again. The majority of new homeowners are no longer buying with their own earnings, they are buying with their family's wealth. And this is the poison in the well. That torrent of private money does not make housing cheaper. It does the exact opposite. It floods into the same fixed supply and props the prices up even higher, keeping them permanently out of reach for anyone whose parents cannot help. And so Britain quietly splits into 2 nations. On one side, the inheritors, who will own homes because their family already did. On the other, the renters, who work just as hard, earn just as much, and will never catch up because they made the fatal mistake of being born into the wrong family. Home ownership is becoming less about what you earn and more about who you are related to. So let us step back and see the whole machine at once. Permission is deliberately scarce. Existing owners pull up the drawbridge. Falling rates inflated the debt. Investors outbid families. A tax freezes the ladder. And parental money keeps the whole structure standing. None of these is an accident. Together, they are a system. And a house is not just another expense in that system. It is the foundation of national wealth. It is the thing on top of which people build families, start businesses, take risks, and spend into the wider economy. And this is the part that should frighten everyone, owners included. If the foundation of the entire economy is 8 times more expensive than it should be, then everything built on top of it starts to crack. People delay having children because they cannot afford the space. They stay in jobs they hate because they cannot afford to move. They stop spending, stop starting, stop dreaming, because every spare pound is swallowed by rent or by the mortgage. That is the true cost of an 8 times house. It was never really about the price of the bricks. It was about the future those bricks were supposed to hold. And right now, in 2026, that future is being quietly priced out of reach. If you learned something, like this video and hit subscribe. See you in the next one.